Welcome to today's Explainer. I'm absolutely thrilled to have you here today because we're diving into something that has literally taken over office group chats, dinner tables, and airport lounges all around the world. We're talking about the SpaceX IPO. Look, it is, quite simply, the biggest initial public offering in history, period. But honestly, before the opening bell even rings, Elon Musk's aerospace giant has already completely transcended finance to become this massive cultural event. So today, we're going to break down the numbers, filter out all that noise, and look at the actual research to understand what's really driving this historic moment.
Here is the roadmap for today's Explainer. We're looking at 1. The trillion-dollar hype. 2. The record-breaking demand from retail investors. 3. The valuation reality check from analysts. 4. Governance and regulatory risks. And finally, 5. Pricing a visionary's dream.
All right, Section 1, the trillion-dollar hype. Let's break down this totally unprecedented valuation. To really wrap your head around the sheer scale of this IPO, consider this. A recent Reuters Ipsos poll actually showed that SpaceX is now more recognizable to the American public than some major political figures. That is how immense the hype has become. We aren't just talking about a tech company here. We're talking about a household name that has totally captured the public's imagination. And as you'd expect, that massive mindshare translates directly into the math. $135. That is the target share price expected when the company makes its highly anticipated debut on the NASDAQ this Friday. It's a serious premium price tag that really sets the stage for a truly historic financial event.
Now, when you take that share price and apply it to the company at large, you get this absolutely breathtaking number. SpaceX is seeking a valuation of around $1.75 to $1.8 trillion. That is trillion with a T. If this valuation actually holds up, Elon Musk's wealth could skyrocket even further, for sure. But perhaps just as fascinating, thousands of everyday SpaceX employees could literally become millionaires overnight. It's just a massive, massive wealth generation event.
Moving right along to Section 2, record-breaking retail demand and the real fear of missing out.
So this IPO is actually structured a bit differently, specifically to capture that massive demand from everyday investors and Elon Musk's super dedicated fan base, people who absolutely do not want to miss out on the action. The company is offering more than 555 million shares in total, but what's really incredible here is that 30% of those shares are being reserved entirely for retail investors. To put that into perspective, that is triple the amount typically allocated to everyday investors in a standard IPO. It's basically a direct invitation for Musk fans to fork over their cash and grab a slice of the company.
And the numbers perfectly illustrate the sheer frenzy we're seeing right now. The target offering aims to raise about $75 billion. However, and this is wild, according to reports from Reuters and Bloomberg, investor interest has already exploded past $250 billion. The IPO is nearly 4 times oversubscribed. You've got institutional Wall Street heavyweights and everyday retail investors practically fighting each other for a piece of this pie.
To kind of ground these astronomical numbers into something we can all visualize, imagine a massive stadium. There are 75,000 tickets available for the big championship game. But when the ticket booth finally opens, 250,000 people show up, demanding entry. That is the exact dynamic happening with the SpaceX IPO right now. There are far, far more eager buyers than there are available shares.
Okay, Section 3, the valuation reality check. Let's see what the analysts have to say.
Now, here is where we reach the top of the roller coaster and kind of initiate the drop. Because while hype is incredibly powerful, actual financial valuation requires a much closer, colder look. When we slow down and examine the sober research, specifically from Morningstar, which was cited by the Financial Times, a really stark contrast emerges. Against that targeted $135 IPO price, Morningstar estimates the stock may actually only be worth around $63 per share. That's more than 50% below the IPO asking price. In fact, Morningstar suggests that SpaceX might be overvalued by a massive 114%.
And the core reason for that super cautious analyst outlook is rooted right here. In its own filings, SpaceX implies an addressable market of $1.6 trillion, but Morningstar estimates that addressable market to be much, much smaller, around $129 billion. So the really crucial takeaway here is that analysts are extremely cautious because they believe investors are basically paying a massive premium today for a hyper-ambitious future that just doesn't match current market estimates.
That gap between ambition and reality brings us right into Section 4, governance and regulatory risks. Red flags and reality.
You see, the immense scale of this offering hasn't just caught the eye of investors, it has also triggered some serious regulatory pushback in Washington. Senator Elizabeth Warren has directly written to the Securities and Exchange Commission, the SEC, asking them to delay SpaceX's trading debut. She argues that the sheer projected size of this IPO absolutely justifies a, quote, careful SEC review. She's asking regulators to investigate whether SpaceX has provided enough transparent information to actually justify this record-setting valuation so that everyday investors can accurately judge if the stock is overpriced.
Furthermore, Senator Warren's letter points directly to the company's governance structure. Get this. Elon Musk controls a staggering 85% of the shareholder voting power. Warren warns that this gives Musk an absolutely unprecedented level of power over the company's direction, which ultimately means public purchasers of the stock would have significantly fewer rights than they are traditionally offered when buying public shares.
And we really have to balance those governance risks with the hard financial estimates. Looking ahead to the company's reported 2025 estimates, SpaceX is projecting a massive $18.7 billion in revenue. But look just below that. They also estimate a net loss of $4.9 billion. So while the revenue generation is undeniably huge, actual profitability remains very much a work in progress. Which finally brings us to our last section, pricing a visionary's dream. We're going way beyond the rockets.
To really grasp why investors are so eager to jump in, despite the risks and the current lack of profitability, we have to reframe how we view the company. People aren't just buying into a rocket manufacturer anymore. Investors are dreaming about the next trillion-dollar tech giant based on these super exciting initiatives. Starlink's massive satellite internet business, artificial intelligence infrastructure, and even the totally sci-fi sounding concept of space data centers. But remember, the real risk lies in the fact that these trillion-dollar dreams are built almost entirely on business models and technologies that are simply unproven at this massive scale.
And honestly, perhaps nothing illustrates the wildly visionary and highly speculative nature of this IPO quite like this incredible detail buried in the company's prospectus. Elon Musk could receive an additional $1 billion bonus shares if he successfully gets 1 million people to colonize Mars. Just think about that. It is a massive payout tied to a sci-fi future that, at least for right now, exists mostly in PowerPoint presentations.
Which leaves us with this final, truly provocative thought to chew on. Is SpaceX entering a transformative period? Probably yes. But is it a guaranteed winning investment? Absolutely not. When emotions take over and people invest purely because of the fear of missing out, things get incredibly risky. So before anyone treats this IPO like a lottery ticket to Mars, ask yourself, are you making a true financial investment based on current realities, or are you simply making an emotional bet on Elon Musk's biggest dream? Thanks so much for joining me on today's Explainer. Keep asking the right questions, and I'll see you next time.